Everyone, or whenever you're getting a chance to listen to this video. My name is Frank Coppersmith. For the last 2 years, I've had a chance to lead a team looking into recruiting and retaining the rising millennial generation and the generation coming after it, Generation Z. For the next 20 minutes or so, I want to dive into some of our findings and some of the research that we've done. I'm hopeful that you will find this useful and helpful as you take your senior leader course. I'm excited to have a chance to share this with you, and I'm looking forward to hearing your feedback. Let's go ahead and dive right on in. First of all, the initial challenge we were asked to look into came up in around 2017. Mobilization assistant to the TJAG asked us to look at finding ways and building a model around recruiting and retaining the millennial generation. So we chose to focus on two areas: recruiting from the regular Air Force and retaining the current Air Reserve component. The reason we did that is that we know that if we're able to effectively recruit from RegAF, we're getting really experienced, pre-vetted individuals. And then if we're able to retain folks in the ARC, especially those folks who came from RegAF, it's really a twofer. For everyone we keep, that's one we don't have to go find. The challenge, though, we're running into, and that RegAF is definitely seeing, is that especially when we look at law school students and graduates, fewer folks are going to law school. The people attending law school have lower and lower performance, lower MBE scores, and much lower LSAT scores. What that means is all the top law firms, all the top legal organizations, including the Air Force, and obviously our sister services, are all competing for that same small tranche of folks. And so that's going to be a challenge for us in the ARC, not only because we are very dependent on the success that RegAF has in recruiting, but also because there actually aren't quite enough folks coming off of RegAF to fill all of our slots. So we're competing in this pool as well for non-prior service folks. The thing is, when you look at the challenges that we're going to face as a military service, it really is even more challenging than that, because it's even broader. When we look at the folks who are able to able to serve in the military, folks in our recruiting age between 17 and 24 or so are just increasingly unqualified. But you can see here on this chart is the ratio of applicants to accessions continues to grow. That means we're seeing fewer and fewer applicants for every person that we take into service. While this is not specifically a challenge just for the JAG Corps, for attorneys and paralegals, it is one that we are facing at a macro level. So a little bit about some metrics around what we are doing. So we get about 200 applications for people to serve as judge advocates per year. We take in about 60, most of those from RegAF. That said, we bring in about 2 to 3 non-prior service every quarter. Where this leaves us is JAG Manning is about at our long-term historical average of about 85%. While it was higher a few years ago, it's kind of reverted to the mean. On the paralegal side, it's a little bit below where we'd expect it to be and where we'd like it to be. This is giving us some staffing challenges. The team is actually focusing on paralegal recruiting in the next 2 quarters, as we're looking to really understand that number and figure out how we can make that better. Bottom line, though, is for all of us is there just aren't enough folks coming off RegAF to fill all the ARC ranks. So as we start thinking about the rising generations, the millennials and the Gen Z, lots of things have been written about millennials, much of it not particularly positive. They're self-absorbed, they're not really involved, they're not connected, they're killing industries. So the question is this true? Is this what the millennial generation is? And of course it's not true. This is what's really going on. Millennials came of age during a time of incredible change. They saw technology changes, globalization, massive economic disruption brought about by the Great Recession, and they are really the first folks who are true digital natives. They have grown up in an era where technology was available all the time, every time, in their pocket, all the time, internet, and that's given them a very different way of communicating amongst themselves, of communicating with friends, with coworkers, with businesses, and serving really as customers. They're really different folks in that regard. So a little bit about them. They represent about a quarter of the population. Interestingly enough, when you add in the rising Generation Z, together those two populations will represent more than half of our workforce by 2025. Another interesting point, the very first folks who entered military service as millennials are actually starting to retire. So we're really getting on top of millennials just as they're reaching the senior leadership roles. They're very racially diverse. They're incredibly educated, but that education came at a cost. Lots of student loan debt. Lots of student loan debt that hit them at the same time that the Great Recession took place. That Great Recession, therefore, had a pretty big impact on their ability to earn and their ability to find good work. What that means is they're really interested in something called the gig economy. They really like the idea of assembling lots of little jobs into one big job, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. They also have a pretty low level of social trust, low marriage rate, about half that of boomers, and aren't very interested in military service. Lots of reasons for that. Some interesting parenting strategies, from participation trophies to helicopter parenting. Lots of issues with the world economy. Obviously, they were there for 9/11. And technology. Technology has just changed everything, especially the rise of social media. Social media, which has changed the way that they interact with their friends and their colleagues, where they're much less likely to actually go and have a meeting or a telephone call or go see someone. Rather, they're just going to have that conversation via social media. Millennials are coming into the workforce. Obviously, they're here. They've been here for a while. Lots of concerns about where the future of work is going. They don't think that any job has any type of survival. They've seen their parents and their older siblings get laid off after years or decades of service. They don't expect employers to have any loyalty, and they return that non-loyalty. About half expect to quit their job in about 2 years. They also expect to be replaced with technology, with outsourcing, robots. They don't think that there's any chance that any job that they have now will last very long. They do, however, think that new jobs will arise. That's why they're interested in this sense of a gig economy. They're really interested in putting together full-time employment with a bunch of different little jobs. They like to work places that provide positive workplace culture. That means for them flexible working arrangements, lots of training, support, and appropriate financial rewards. Though not necessarily looking for the absolute highest compensation, they are looking for that flexibility. Of course, now we have Generation Z coming up as well. Gen Z came up during an age of recession, financial crisis, war, terror. They had just had it rough, and they're very much a cautious and hardened generation. In fact, they're very much like the silent generation, the generation that came up through the Great Depression. It came up after enduring World War I, but then turned around and reaped an incredible post-war boom. That's what we've got today. The American economy is as strong as it has ever been. Less than 4% unemployment, record levels of unemployment, employment amongst minority populations, record levels of economic growth, low inflation. That has given them an opportunity to really reap some financial and professional rewards that the millennial generation didn't really get. And similarly, they have done a great job of basically avoiding a lot of risk, especially financial risk. They're happy to work overtime. They're happy to make work their central focus in life if they get a chance to avoid school debt, if they can avoid taking risks and really focusing on their future. That's translated into a culture that's really different. It's not risk takers. They're not likely to drink. They haven't got their driver's license out. They're not as social. Curiously, and maybe because of it, they're seeing record levels of anxiety, record levels of depression, and this is depression that's treated with medicine. As an aside, I recently was the moderator on a panel. That panel had mostly Gen Z and millennials on it. I invited a young woman to join this panel. She did an amazing job. It was the first panel she'd ever been on. We got done. I asked her, how did you prep for the panel? What did you do to get ready? You did a great job. Her answer was, I just took some Xanax and I was fine. That wasn't the answer I was expecting, but it was helpful to me to understand how she addresses and solves problems. She was uncomfortable in this space and thought she was entirely prepared to use a pharma solution to fix it. Interestingly enough, the Gen Z are also not particularly comfortable with face-to-face interactions. Because they are true digital natives, much like the millennials, they really like connecting via computer and not face-to-face. So what do we do as a team? What we wanted to do was produce what we are describing as candidate personas. A persona is a representation of people we want to influence, whether they're RegAF or non-prior service or sister service folks, people we wanted to influence to come on board as a JAG or a paralegal. To do that, we have to understand what motivates them, what their concerns are, how they like to get information. We did this through more than 40 one-on-one interviews, more than 100 hours of interview time, plus probably 10 or more senior leader interviews to really capture what is going on out there and what motivates them. And then we'll use this to help focus messaging and outreach. We ultimately identified 6 personas, and we really had really consistent findings throughout. So this is a little more detail on what personas are and how they work. I'll leave this to your review. This is the list of questions that we use to put these together. Importantly, this list is also being used to drive and generate our exit interviews. So you may be aware that Colonel Battle has been leading the charge to build a series of exit interviews. As senior leaders in the JAG Corps, you may be asked to do exit interviews. You may be asked to identify people leaving the ARC so that we can have an exit interview done. We're going to be using the same questions that we use for the personas so that we can marry that data together and see if some of the things that we're doing have any impact. So here are some of the personas. These are the 4 that we came up with for recruiting. The division, probably not so surprising. Obviously, we've got RegAFs, paralegals, and JAGs, folks separating from the sister services and non-prior service. But is interesting is some of the elements inside this as we kind of dive in. When you look at like JAGs, for example, they really want to stay part of the team. It's all about service for them. On the paralegal side, it's a little bit more focused on things like, hey, I want to make sure I protect my benefits. I want to make sure that I have a retirement. And it's also a different financial focus. We didn't hear at all concerns around judge advocates, both on recruiting or really on RegAF around, say, unpaid travel costs. But we heard that a lot from paralegals. And here's just some of our data on retention as well. I'll leave this to your review. So why are folks leaving the Air Force and why do we care? I care about why people are leaving the Air Force because if I understand why they're leaving, I can understand how I can recruit them. And here's why they're leaving. They're unhappy with the work. They're unhappy with the work, and that means they're unhappy with things like, and these are exact quotes, layup drug cases that individuals say have no value for society or the Air Force or the individual, where they're actually hurting someone when that person didn't do anything that's really that bad. That's really almost a direct quote. Sketchy sex assault cases where they feel pressured to move forward with prosecutions that they're not comfortable with. It's a big deal. And it translates right into, or really ties right to that next bullet, issues with RegAF leadership. Lots of concerns with staff judge advocates, mostly with the concept that, hey, I don't think my SJA has my back. That's interesting because as a senior leader in a NAF or in a base office, we're in a place to mentor, we're in a place to lead. This is a real opportunity for us both to more effectively recruit, serving as an ARC ambassador, as well as help the RegAF. Some issues where RegAF is incompatible with personal life, timing, school. A lot of times we heard this from paralegals. A lot of times this is on the paralegal side where they're ready to get out and go to school or start a family. We also heard this with 2 income couples. So not a lot of pushback or concern around salary, a sense that the salary and benefits are at least market. They feel appropriate. But if you take 2 individuals who both have school debt, and we know, especially millennials, everyone's carrying a lot of school debt, if that spouse who has to move every 2 or 3 years on RegAF can't really get their career going, they're always working well below their market rate, they're really going to struggle paying those debts off. Then this last piece around the Air Force Survey Office. So the Air Force Survey Office does a retention survey every 2 years. The latest was in 2017. Enormous data here, more than 300 questions, divided up by AFSC, by officer, by paralegal. We can split it by RegAF and ARC, and we had it sliced all those different ways. Amazing data in there. And I won't dive in. There's lots for us to discuss here for those interested. But one of the things that came out that is very clear is that work stress is cited by JAGs and by paralegals as a reason to leave more than the rest of the Air Force by a material amount. So when you look at the rest of the Air Force, about 43% say work stress is one of the reasons I might leave RegAF. 57% of paralegals say that. That's a big deal, and something we have to, I think, be aware of and deal and start to try to address. So why do people like the ARC? Why do people come over? Liberation, freedom, feeling like you're a valued member of a team, especially in the National Guard, especially in Cat A. This comment that it's a perfect side hustle to my civilian career. The side hustle is a concept that comes up a lot with Gen Z and the millennials, where this sense of, hey, I've got a full-time job, but I don't trust that that job will be safe, so I really want a backup job too. The number of people who drive Uber and Lyft just to make sure they always have an income stream, I think would surprise you. And I mean that, the number of professionals that do it. A lot of interest, a lot of sense that the work is really interesting, that their work on the civilian side maybe is kind of boring. The work on the reserve side is interesting. So what that means to us is service is what's keeping people engaged. Service, 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 the sense of flexibility and control. And then we did hear that there was some benefit of financial benefits. But one key point here, and this came up in our personas as we think about doing our outreach. In our reserve materials, the very first bullet is about things like the BX and the commissary and on-base services and the fitness center. And after 40 plus interviews, none of that ever came up. So what that means is, as we think about what benefits we want to surface, we understand, hey, it might be things like TRICARE Reserve Select. It might be things like retirement, but don't talk about the BX. That's not going to really move the needle for anyone. So if we think about this ARC story for millennials, it's about the ARC being, it's a great gig. It's a great side gig. Lots of satisfaction, great opportunity to continue service. And it's great for you as a millennial or someone in Generation Z. It's all about big ideas. It's about this personal and professional growth and exploration. It's this unique community. You get to do something that's really valuable that others don't get to do. It's a little silly, but it's a little bit Twitter worthy. It's Instagram worthy. It's something that you want to share on your socials. And then this last quote came from one of the folks we interviewed, where you get to serve in the world's greatest military while staying rooted in community, career, family. Wow, that's really powerful. This is going to be a big piece of our marketing going forward. So why do people leave the ARC? Really two buckets. The first is leadership. In the IMA space, there is a big disconnect between many IMAs and their active duty offices. This disconnect takes the form of a lot of different things. It takes the form of, I don't know when I should come in. I don't know what work I should be doing. I don't know that I'm contributing in a material way. It's a sense that I'm not part of a team. Again, National Guard, Cat A, no concerns there. Huge positive that is in fact the motivator for them. The other piece, and no surprise here, is this sense of the ARC burden. First year is absolutely difficult. Really, it's absolutely horrible. It's hard to be a reservist. It's hard to figure it out. There's a lot of unpaid cost. It's hard to get paid even when you're supposed to get paid. It's hard to get orders to do the things you do. And there's lots of issues with training, especially on the paralegal side, who have to get the upgrade training. Lots of burdens here. We can do some things to help, do some things through the Junior Officers Council, do some things through training and education and messaging, but some of this is outside of our ability to address. So here are the recommendations the team came back with. The first is we need to tell the ARC story. We've got great story to tell around flexibility, around service. Make sure we tell that all the time, every time, and then tie it into the things that motivate millennials. What motivates them? This opportunity to learn new things, this opportunity to serve, this opportunity to have a social media worthy side gig. How do we bring that together, tie those together? And then do it with what we describe as authentic messaging. When we think about authentic messaging, it's just the idea that we're telling people the good and the bad. And we're not making every message to our ARC friends an attorney dressed in their service dress in a law library holding a law book. Why? Because we all know, and everyone knows, that's not how we practice law anymore. Lots of other things we can do around onboarding and mentoring. We've got that through the Junior Officers Council. But it's also about putting out information in a channel in a way they want to hear it. A way they want to hear it is they want to find it on YouTube. They want to find it on Facebook. They want to find it through their socials. We rejected building and even though it was a specific tasker for us, writing a new recruiting trifold. Why? No one wants to read a trifold. No one wants to download a trifold. No one wants to print a trifold. So it's the idea of using the right channel. And then this next piece, leveraging power of vignettes. We'll talk about that more, but it's the idea they want to hear true, authentic stories from people that are like them. So they want to hear stories of millennials, of Gen Z who are successful. This next one, removing the taboo, is all about making sure that folks on Reg F feel comfortable talking to ARC members about maybe serving in the ARC. One team, one fight. We know there's some challenges there, but that's something for us as a leadership team to address. Also talk about the benefits of the alumni network, the sense, hey, we've got some great people, and you get to be connected with all of them. Also, this sense of an ARC ambassador. Every time we do reserve duty, every ARC member should be thinking about how they represent the ARC. We've got more on that later, but this is a big part. And then these last couple pieces here, this life cycle model is nothing more than making sure that the right information goes in front of the right people at the right time. It's all about making sure, hey, if you're thinking of switching to the ARC, your questions are, what is the ARC and how do I get in? Once you're in and you've been in a couple years, maybe it's things like, man, how do I better structure my annual tours so that I don't have to have a lot of unpaid free IDT travel? It's about different information at different times. We also think there's great opportunities in recruiting sister service personnel and then leveraging civilian job expertise, especially litigation, especially sex assault litigation. So let's talk about what we're doing to wrap this project up. So we are going to leverage the reporter. The reporter is in an all new digital format. It's very flexible. It's on mobile. It's blended media. That means we can mix video and slides and charts and data all together. And what we're doing is we're producing our detailed report on the reporter. It'll have a lot of the information you're seeing today, plus a lot more. We've also got an article coming out on authentic messaging. We're putting together a panel on managing and leading millennials and beyond. We're also working on a whole series of video vignettes, and let's dive into those because those are really interesting. We went to the annual survey of the law here in the past, this past month, and we recorded 14 speakers, 14 volunteers who wanted to tell us about their ARC story. Totally unscripted, all millennial and Gen Z speakers. Questions about their family and personal life, how they balance their career, their civilian career, and their ability to serve as a military officer and enlisted personnel, how they're bringing all that together. We're then taking that information, taking those videos, and we're going to be using them on Facebook and elsewhere as a way both for recruiting and messaging. The image you see on the left is Major Musselman from JAX. He does a regular Facebook Live broadcast to anyone who wants to sign up and watch it. He has gotten thousands of views of these videos, and that is amazing when you realize that those are thousands of views when there are only maybe 40 or 50,000 law students each year. That's that's great penetration. As we wrap up here, as we wrap up all this little overview, I just got a couple quick takes. As you go out as senior leaders and start thinking about how you're going to work with millennials and Gen Z, especially if you have not in the past, here are some of the things that I've learned and things I want to surface. The first and maybe most important is around flexibility. Flexibility is really key. They expect and want to be able to do remote work. They need to be able to have adjustable schedules, but we can leverage this to our advantage. That means we can get more work from folks if we can let them have the flexibility they need. Similarly, they're looking for training. They want education. They want to learn new things. And that bullet really ties into the next one around quick career changes. They're not expecting to become the TJAG next year. What they are expecting to do is once they've done a job for a year or so, they want to move on to something new or add something new to their job. That means if they're coming into a legal office and the first year they're there, they do a lot of legal assistance. Can we arrange it so the second year they're there, they're doing military justice, and the third year they're doing civil law or some blend across the board? Again, that's fairly decent advice for everyone, but they're really looking for it. They're really expecting it. Also, as you think about how you relate to millennials, it's different. The old carrots and sticks don't work anymore. That's a quote from Colonel Watson at the Air Force JAG School. It's about inspiration, not motivation. It's about being a mentor, more of a mentor, not a boss. But that works for us because technically, if you think about how we're structured in the ARC, we're not exactly their boss. Their boss is the staff judge advocate. That gives us great flexibility to come in as a mentor, as a guide. They are also, especially amongst Generation Z, looking for some recognition. And let's drop down to that. Millennials, they want to win as a team. They are looking for teamwork. Gen Z is different. Gen Z says there are winners and losers in this world. They see competition as an important part. They want to know how to win, and they're looking for that guidance. Of course, I think both of those fit within our culture of service. We both know that there are opportunities for us to work together as teams. There are opportunities for people to compete directly, and that's okay. So we can make all of that work. Also, as we think about where we come from at in that relationship with these rising folks, they just want to know what result we're trying to get to, and then they want the flexibility to reach that result, however they need to get there. I think often in the Air Force we think about the process is the way. Maybe sometimes the process is the punishment, but what we really want is what's the outcome we're trying to drive. Let them use their innovative knowledge, the things that they know that we don't, to help us get there. And that last piece, don't disconnect digital natives. I realize many of us work in SCIFs. That means all the digital devices get locked away. But if they don't, if you work in a non-classified area, don't be surprised if your Gen Z and millennial folks are bringing a tablet and a phone to a meeting. Don't be surprised if they're bringing their laptop in to take notes. Don't be surprised if they're asking for the wireless password. Why? Because they're going to do their job and about 5 other things all at the same time, and that's how they've come about. That's how they've been raised, and they're able to do it. Again, maybe not for you and I, but for them, that's their natural working environment. The great thing about that, of course, is they are also not going to say no when we reach out to them after hours because they're used to that type of experience. So with that, I wrap it up. Obviously can't take questions here via YouTube. I am happy, though, to answer any questions or provide any other guidance that you may like. I am thrilled to have this opportunity to present these materials to you. These are being reused in a variety of ways, including powering our IROC presentations and of course, here helping at the Senior Leader course. Congratulations to all of you who have been selected for these new and terrific roles. I'm thrilled for you. I think you have an amazing opportunity to work with our rising membership. Again, congratulations. Reach out anytime, and good luck with the upcoming course. Thank you.